All right, so what I'm going to do in this last mini lecture for week 3 is talk to you about a couple of other interpersonal communication theories that are mentioned in the book. So the first one to think about is politeness theory. And the assumption of politeness theory is that we are motivated in our interactions with other people to maintain face, to manage the impressions that people have of us so that they think of us in a particular way. And we do this rather strategically, and that's why the authors say that that's why we're rational and goal-oriented with it with respect to our face needs, and that's an important thing that we want to do, is to have some control over how and what people think about us. So the two types of face that they talk about are positive and negative. Now these, unfortunately, are terms that are they're kind of hard to map on to what it is that they're referring to. So you'll just need to try to remember what they are. But positive face is face we put on when we need to be liked. And that is when we want people to think highly of us, when we want to make people think that we're friendly, that we're smart, that we're interested in what they're saying. So these are things that we are trying to do to have people look at us in a positive light. A negative face is the opposite. This is a face that we put on when we want to act freely. I don't want to put on a face just so you like me in a certain way. Rather, I want to put on a face that is exactly how I feel. So for example, you've probably been in situations where you've listened to someone talk and they're talking and perhaps they're droning on and on, perhaps they're boring, but you're still trying to show that you're listening and smiling and nodding your head. That would be a positive face because you're trying to do something that would, show approval, that get people to think positively of you of being a good listener and things like that. Negative face, on the other hand, would be you just showing your real reactions to what they're doing. And they're bored, they're boring to you, you look like you're bored, and you don't care. So we do have both of those face needs. Another quick example of that might be when someone asks you, so how are you doing? So the polite thing to do to be perceived as friendly and knowing social norms would be to say, I'm fine, thank you very much. That'd be the positive face. The negative face would be something like you saying, actually, I feel pretty terrible today. It's been a bad day. You're saying what you're actually feeling, not putting on any kind of face that would be considered socially appropriate in that situation. It's rather a face that reflects how you're feeling at that time. So that gives you an idea of that. Now, face-threatening events, those are things that happen when someone criticizes you in some way, shape, or form. Now, the book talks about some things in which that's managed, but I personally like you not to think about what that section is about preserving face, but rather think about the remediation process. This is not in the book, but it is something that I would like for you to know and talk about because I think it makes a lot of sense when it comes to face work. So managing face occurs when there's a transgression. You've been accused of something. You've been accused for being late to class. You've been accused of not keeping up your housework with your roommates. You've been accused of not paying attention to a person in a relationship. So there's an accusation that a person makes of you. You then have to provide an account in a response to that accusation. And then the person who made the accusation will provide an outcome of some sort, like either accept it or deny it or something like that, or recycle it back through and do a reaccusation, right? So we have our accusation, accused of a wrongdoing, and here are the kinds of accounts that we can give. We can accept it. We can say, you're right. I shouldn't have done that. That's simply accepting that I did something wrong and have acknowledged that I did it. An apology is where you accept that you did something wrong and you say that you're sorry. So in terms of like doing the dishes, your turn in doing the dishes with your roommates, you'd say, yes, I haven't been doing the dishes. The apology would be, yes, I haven't been doing the dishes and I'm really sorry. I didn't mean to put a burden on my roommates because of me not doing my work. Now, an excuse is an interesting move because this time, and with an excuse, you acknowledge that normally it is important for me to do the dishes or to do the action that I've been accused of not doing, but circumstances beyond my control kept me from doing it. All right, so an example before I get back to the dishes, an example would be I accuse you of being late for class. Yes, I am late for class. Normally I should be on time for class, but under the circumstances today, I had a flat tire and the time it took to change the tire kept me from making class on time. That's an excuse. So in the case of the dishes, say, yes, normally I would do the dishes, but unfortunately, I had to, I guess you could do the same thing of saying I had a phone call that lasted longer than I could get out of, and therefore I didn't do it before it was then time for me to leave the house. Now, justification is where you also acknowledge that under normal circumstances, I should have done the thing I'm accused of not doing, but under these circumstances, I was justified in not doing it. So in this case, I find the better example would be one in which you would look at you're late for class. Rather than saying you had a flat, that would be one which circumstances beyond your control led to you being late. The justification would be that there was something that took priority over coming to class. So that would be I ran upon an accident and some people needed help, and I stopped to provide help. Normally, I should be in class on time. That's the right thing to do. But under these circumstances, it was the right thing for me to do to stop and provide help. And then, of course, you could just do a denial. And the denial would be that you haven't been doing the dishes. I have too. No, no, you haven't. Yes, I have. That would be a denial. You would just deny the accusation as being false or inaccurate. And then there's the outcome. So what will happen then is the person will either accept what you're talking about in your account, or they may reject it. They may say that's not good enough, or they may reaccuse you or modify it or something like that. This is a common way in which we manage face in a conversation. All right, so we talk about face work as being really managing impressions. And so let's talk a little bit about impressions, particularly first impressions, last impressions, and things like that. These are not in the book, but I think they are important as they relate to politeness theory. So a primacy effect, that's the first impression you have. You know, first impression is I meet you for the first time and this is the impression I have. A lot of times people think a first impression is very important because basically if I think positively of you when I first see you, then everything you do tends to be filtered through that initial positive reaction. That's why with an interview, when we have a job interview, we want to make a good positive first impression. I want to talk like I know what I'm talking about. I want to look professional. I want to act friendly like I would be a good colleague. I want people to have a first impression of me that I could be competent and a good citizen in the company and things like that. Now, recency effect is the most recent impression I have of you. So for example, if we're talking about someone in class, the primacy effect would be your impression you give me on the first day of class. And how long does that last throughout the semester? On the other hand, my impression of you may be what you've done or did in class most recently. And then I may think of that is the basis upon which that I'm making an impression of you. And then you could have an exceptional performance. And what an exceptional performance effect is that during the course of a period of time, there's something that really stands out of the ordinary, either really, really good or really, really bad. So for example, you may be, as a student, maybe you were performing rather, mediocrely on tests and things like that. But when you did your group project, it really stood out as being a really excellent piece of work. And my impression of you may be based mostly on that one group project that you provided, as opposed to all of these other tests and assignments which were more mediocre. Or like in a relationship, to look at it going the other direction, This would be where, we have a great relationship and everything, but I do one thing that is very untoward, like cheat on you or something like that. That one thing then changes everything. And so that's the impression that I have based upon that one negative thing. So primacy, first impressions; recency, most recent impressions; exceptional performance, events that really stand out in terms of being very positive or very negative, that I then use to make a judgment about who you are. All right, then we have communication privacy management theory. I'm just going to talk about this a little bit because I'm not too familiar with this theory. But remember when we talked about dialectical tensions in one of the other mini lectures? Basically, according to communication privacy management, or CPM, we experience a tension between information that we want to share publicly versus information we want to keep private to ourselves. This is information we have within us. So public information is what I'll share with other people. Private information is what I will just keep to myself and not share. Whether or not information is public or private in terms of whether we choose to share it or to hold it in depends on a variety of things. First, there could be some cultural factors, such as some cultural groups may be more inclined to be more disclosive of more personal information, whereas other groups may be much more protective of that. Probably ones that are more relevant to what we may see every day or the next ones. So some might relate to gender, and gender would be in the case where women tend to be more disclosive with personal information on average than are men. That's kind of a general kind of generalization some people make based upon gender roles. There could be motivational factors. I may have a reason to disclose something very private to you for something I might gain or for something that I might accomplish. Or it may be very important to me to get something off my chest, so I disclose private information. Or maybe I withhold information in other circumstances because I don't want it to be used in the wrong way, and I think I may not be able to trust you with that information. Contextual would be depending on the situation. So for example, the kind of things that we talk about, and let's say the kinds of things we might say about other people. If we're in a boardroom meeting, something like that, there's a lot of things that we probably would not tell about our colleagues or things during a meeting like that. But if we're at a happy hour at a bar, someplace like that with a group of friends, we might be more willing to disclose that kind of information, because in a boardroom you have more formal discourse, whereas in a bar you might have more social and conversational discourse. And then the last one would be risk benefit. It's like, and again, this relates to how much trust do I have in you of being able to, if I give you information, will you be able to handle it, with integrity and not use it to manipulate me or other people? And so there may be a benefit with me disclosing it because it's real important that you know this part about me. But on the other hand, I've got to weigh that benefit against the potential risk of what you will do with it. Will you keep it to yourself, or will you try to share it with other people? So those are the things to think about on communication privacy management. And don't worry in the book about privacy management boundaries. I think those are kind of complex and complicated. So just focus on the things, on those theories that we talked about in this lecture right here.